So this is us. Who shops at Asda? Okay, not many of you. At least you're honest. Well, anyway, okay, so we are a very big organisation in our own right of 172,000 colleagues. However, many of you will know we're also part of the biggest retailer in the world and one of the biggest organisations in the world, the number one business in the world, which is Walmart, which employs 2 million people, which I will say out of interest to you, I think the only one that supersedes Walmart in number of employees is the Chinese army. I say that out of just interest really rather than anything else, but we are part of Walmart and have been part of Walmart for the last 16 years. So you're a huge retailer and interestingly in many countries around the world. And as I've just said, we are in the most changing world ever, and when I go and visit Walmart in the US, they are changing, and interestingly about 3 or 4 years behind us in terms of where the UK market is changing. So the UK market is always very out at front, very early adopters of online shopping, early adopters of the market changing, very early adopters of the discounting trend that we've seen more recently, and very much Walmart use us as kind of the innovation hub to be able to then take things around the world. So I know we might not always think of ourselves in that way in the UK, but that is it, the kind of retail early adopters all comes from here. And as you know, and as you will, I'm sure, unless you haven't been reading the press for a long time, the market is clearly changing, and those people who have been successful for many years and assumed maybe that success was going to continue are getting some clear dawning sense of reality. If you read a lot of it, you will also know that in that market, whilst clearly the challenges of Aldi and Lidl and other discounters and the high end causes us all challenges, we are performing better than the other three. And again, you will have seen that with the latest set of results. So why is that? Why are we performing better? And that's what I'm really going to talk to you about today. And that doesn't mean it's not tough, by the way, and we've got to stay agile and everything else. But I think there's several things. 2 years ago, about 18 months ago now, we set out on redefining the business strategy. And we were very clear, and Andy talks about this a lot in the press. It's about redefining value retailing in the UK and what that means. Investing hugely in price. We were always the lowest price out of the big four. Continuing to invest in price, but doing more than that. And very much what we've done is we've divided that into 6 work streams for the business. And they are, as you can see on there, about low-cost operating model, about our employer strategy, which I lead for the business, leading online, markets for the future, that's about petrol filling station, our smaller formats, we're growing our superstores, as well as actually how do we reinvigorate our large stores. They're still our number one profit maker. How do we continue to reinvigorate them? And then market leading value proposition is really about our customer proposition, where we really want to appeal to over 55s, mums and ethnics. We have kind of 3 customer groups that are really important to us that we put a lot of focus on. And what is our brand, what is our offer, and are we really appealing where we need to be? And then one that we've actually just recently added is health. That is going to become increasingly important. In fact, interestingly, I think we're a market lagger to the US in health, which obviously where now they have different needs and reasons for their health and wellness and the way they operate. But again, there is something in this that is an emerging trend, particularly as we think of the demographics of the country. So when you look at that, what you have to do is say, well, okay, how do we as a people function, and we tend to ourselves people in Asda as opposed to HR, well, how do we as a people function align to the requirements of that business strategy? So we've got a hugely competitive market set, a very challenging day by day, you know, we live day by day, we're very, very agile, everything has to, you know, change on a thing. If it's not working right, what are we doing about it? It's very impulsive, it's quite gut sometimes, you know, there's a lot of gut in it in terms of what you do. The balance between the real strength of the organisation and the warmth of the organisation. How do you deal with all of that mix and all of that change and continue to build trust with our colleagues and continue to make the changes that you need? And that is why we've kind of really started to think about, okay, how do we ensure that our people plan is in line with that plan. And I guess there are many things on there that will be no surprise to you, that are not things you don't have in your own organisation. They're pretty obvious. The difference, I guess, and the thing we place importance on is the balance. So when I went and talked to the exec about this a few weeks ago, what we were talking about was all of the things down here around changing our way of working. And by the way, I thought the GE presentation on that this morning was fantastic and a real role model. I'm going to take lots of that back, actually. It was some great learning. But really, for us to be able to do, and it was really what they were talking about, for us to do the work that's required down here, what really matters? How are we going to deliver that work? And the only way we're going to deliver that work really lies here. It lies in our culture. If we have not got people, as I describe it, bleeding dark green, bleeding Asda, i.e. ambassadors, they're going to go the extra mile for us, they're going to serve that customer absolutely right. You know, and when you've got 170,000 colleagues that are out there doing that, how do you ensure that all of them are ambassadors of the business, that care about the business, that want to shop in the business and believe in the brand and shop in it, and not go to Aldi and believe, you know, that's a lot cheaper and I'll go and shop there? How do you ensure that? So actually none of this can be done without that. So this has to come first, the cultural elements. And in the past, you will know that Asda has been pretty famous. I mean, it was kind of where a lot started with Alan and Archie around culture. It's very important to us how we do things. We talk about doing things willingly and well. There is a fine balance. There is a fine balance in the organisation between the well and the willingly, between the warmth and the strength. That is a real factor in the what and the how. And everything we do, we have to look at that balance. And by the way, sometimes we get it wrong. And of course, when we get it wrong, what happens? We break trust. It's not perfect. And you've got to constantly keep looking at that balance, because if we're going to get this right and make the change happen and change the organisation as we need to, then this has to be right. Because if it's going to be agile, you need 170,000 colleagues doing it, not a few brains, you know, at the top of the organisation doing it. You need everyone doing it. Does that make sense? Yes. Oh, everyone's looking very serious. Please don't look serious. It's not. I'm the one who should be serious, trying to tell you this. So I think, the way we describe this is that has to be first. That is so important. That ambassadorial, our leaders leading in that Asda way, getting that balance right every day, making a judgment. High EQ needed. High EQ, being able to do that. However, and then if you do this, okay, so you've got to do this. You've got to make the changes. You've got to make tough decisions. In this market, you have to make very, very tough decisions that are right for the business. So kind of that comes first, and you need to do this. But actually, we can't, and then to enable this, we need this. We need the talent piece. So this will make that happen, and then this will mean that's successful. Does that make sense? That's kind of the flow. All three of them have to come together to make it work. If we do too much of that without that, it won't work. If we do too much of that with none of that, it'll be very nice, but we won't be successful. And if we do that and then forget to do this bit on the other side, it won't work either. And I'll give you some really simple examples, because remember, most of the people we are dealing with are hourly paid colleagues on the shop floor. So whilst we have 170,000 people, only 3,500 of those are in our home office. You know, 145,000 of those are front line. But I'll give you a simple example. You may know we recently did a management restructure, and that was some learning for us. We had some interesting press over that period, including from our own colleagues. Yeah, there wasn't always that right balance through that. When we did that, I'll give you a very simple example. We, through the organisation, found 5,000 section leaders who were then going to be our first line managers. We've always been very famous about bringing people through the organisation. Andy Clark himself started, on the shop floor. I started as a general store manager with Asda 50. We're very much like that. You grow through the organisation. It isn't necessarily about your education, about being a grad. We very much want to encourage that bottom up. You come through the organisation, you learn through the organisation. So In our colleague base, we found 5,000 section leaders. It was fantastic and gave them that first line management, that first step on the ladder, brilliant opportunity. So, okay, so how do you suddenly train 5,000 people who are all spread around the country, who are, you know, on a kind of hourly paid rate of earnings? And what we have, so for example on that, we have 16 academies around the UK. Those academies in the last 3 months have trained 9,000 people. They are our specialists. They teach people on the shop floor by coaching, by walking around their model stores, and that's how we do it. So it's very, I want to get over that. You know, there's a lot of things today that are, you're going to hear that maybe are much more about, you know, managing senior talent. A lot of this is very pragmatic, practical, what's required in our industry. So we suddenly went from one structure to a completely new structure. We did lose some experience at that time. How do you deal with that? Okay, we train 9,000 people through an academy in 3 months. That's the kind of agile and responsiveness that we have to have. So that's how we think about that. But at the other end of the scale, we also are an omnichannel business. And we need people who are great at big data. And we need people who are great at being online. And we have a huge business in Walmart, in GEC in Silicon Valley. So you go from, okay, we need to train 9,000 people, right, yeah, to do that job. But then I also need to work out how are we going to have people in the organisation who have got the skills to be able to work in an omnichannel way in our home offices. How do we go and grab those skills that, by the way, in the UK are very rare? You haven't got a Silicon Valley geography in the UK. You know, these are spread out, they're difficult to find. So I suppose the other thing what I'd say about the responsiveness and agile is the reality is you're coming at it from every spectrum. You're dealing with a need down here and a requirement, and then you're dealing with this need up here. So I think I've got how long left? I was just another 5 minutes, right? So I'm not going to go through everything. I hope that gives you a flavour. But then what we've also done more recently is in our home offices and our stores, we have restructured. As we've done that restructure, we have been, again, very thoughtful back to, we need to be more agile in our resource. We need resource in all of these things. And we need to be able to make more efficient resource in some of our business as usual areas. So how do we do that? How do we drive that efficiency? And I think I can't steal anything from what GE said this morning, and I think that's our next stage of the journey. But what we have done is made the start in that journey and getting some very clear principles about how we organise ourselves. Again, I'm sure what you'll notice from their principles, they are not consultant speak. They are down to earth, what we need in our business. Why do we use the words removing treacle and duplication? Guess what? That's what our colleagues say. Our colleagues in the home office go, it's like treacle. I can't get anything done for the treacle. So we use things and we use language and practice that makes sense to our colleagues, so our colleagues can hold a spotlight up to it. And we have spent this year really foundationally getting all of that right. So we went from being a kind of almost digital and online was separate. It was a separate part of the organisation, so therefore it had its own buying team, its own marketing team. Guess what? You can't possibly get to maturity if that's how you're organised. So what we've had to do is go again, well, how do we respond to this? How are we agile to this? That isn't going to work in terms of our strategy that we want to lead online, and we've got this kind of team over here that almost nobody else touches. And by the way, the best people don't even go into it. We end up putting the people in that no one else wants. Yeah, sometimes we notice that. So we've changed all of that. So another example would be that we've put that all through the organisation. So if you're a buyer now in the organisation, you buy towels, whether you're buying towels to sit on our online offer, and by the way, we might need a few more ranges in our online offer, or whether you're buying towels for our supermarkets, our smaller stores, and you might need a couple of ranges in there, or whether you're doing it for our superstores and our bigger stores. And there, we're having to, again, build skills of the future that I described to help our buyers understand what it means to buy for an organisation that is omnichannel. What we've also done as we've done this, I think I've got a couple, is just to make sure that we are going through an awful lot of change. We need to do that to remain agile. We need to do that to remain ahead as we are currently. We've helped our colleagues through that through a programme called Together Leading Change, which is really to help coach our leaders through that change, through the change curve, understanding how we do that. I said before, it's not going to happen without the culture. We've got 72 culture catalysts that were hand-selected in the business, who again, that we've done special work with so they can be leaders as coaches in the organisation to help with that culture, to help keep it alive as we go through this change, and to be the temperature check on it. So for example, we have all of our academy GSM, remember I was explaining the academies, are culture catalysts. Because obviously if we don't have the right culture in those academies that all of our new people are going through, that's going to be a problem, is it? Because they don't only need to see the what, the technical, they need to see the right how being demonstrated. It's that balance again. So all of them are culture catalysts, and they are also the person, not a business HR partner, they're the person who goes to the senior director who looks after that region and say, by the way, you're not doing that right. You're not demonstrating the right culture. You haven't got that balance quite right now. So providing that challenge up and the challenge to their peers. I know I am doing a whistle stop. Things in here about what we were talking about the skills for the future. What do we need? Which we're also working on. So you can see, I suppose what I'm trying to display in all of that is, by the way, guess what? We're going to have a ton more change. So it's not like you can go, right, thank goodness, I've done that. Right, we're sorted. We're not sorted. Day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, we've got to keep changing. We've got to keep evolving. We've got to keep working on these things. And therefore, you have to create an environment through the culture, an environment through, we have got to change and we will do the way of working, and an environment for how you teach and learn and help people through that, which is those three that I described. Talent, culture and way of working. Those three things you've got to keep bringing together all the time to make it work. And I think, hopefully in a very quick nutshell, that kind of is what I was going to talk to you about. Thank you.
So Asda, a very successful part of the world, one of the world's, or the world's largest retailer, but also a market which is probably more price sensitive than any other. So any questions to Amanda in the last few minutes?
Hello.
There we go. Okay. Hi. Thank you for that. Just a question. You were talking about the change that took place in e-commerce online.
Yes.
That you integrated into the business. I was wondering if all these changes also change things into the organisation on the shop floor. So in the stores, how does that translate?
Yes. So for example, I said to you that we've done a restructure in our home office, but also in our stores. So in stores, for example, we used to have a grocery home shopping manager. We've moved away from having a grocery home shopping manager to e-commerce managers, so that they actually, and they're kind of slightly higher level, and their role is to look after the e-commerce customer no matter what way they're purchasing. So, you know, when we started out, it was all about home shopping and taking to the front door. Now it's far more about click and collect. It's far more about remote pickup. So we have many remote pickup. We even have, we're even now establishing a barge on the Thames, because that's a good place for people to pick up their shopping. So, you know, pickup points and where those pickup points are is fascinating. Equally, allowing people to pick up other people's parcels. The drive-through, now interesting, the drive-through is fascinating because that actually emerged from an idea in France. France are very big on drive-through. And even though the US is massive on drive-through for meals and all of that stuff, guess what? They were not at all on picking up their food shopping, which is just interesting. And so now, because of what we've done on drive-through, they're just introducing that into the US now. But, you know, you wouldn't believe that, would you, in terms of some of the psyche and how people shop. So we very much have to now think differently about that e-commerce customer who wants to do things in many, many different ways, including be a customer in our stores. So yes, we consciously did that as part of that change. And even simple things like we used to only offer discount in store for our customers, for our colleagues, sorry, we now offer it online because it's very important that our colleagues experience that shopping experience so they can help the customers with it.
Hello. On the culture change,
Yes.
have you got any sort of correlations between how individual stores have progressed on the culture change and performance of the actual store?
Do you know what, we were having this conversation earlier and I was saying it's one of my big frustrations right now that I can't nail it. I think because we're seeing so many fluctuations right now, you know, the market is so evolving and every day feels different and a bit like uncharted territory, interesting. That at the moment it's quite hard to pin down, and I was having some conversations about this earlier. I would like to intuitively, you know, it's right, instinctively, everything you read, and I know there's been some presentations here about it, but fascinatingly right now in Asda I can't quite pin it down, and we're doing more work on it because it's important that we can show that correlation and show how important it is. You can't just say, well, intuitively I know it. You know, that's an emotional response, and I need to do a bit on the well as well as the willingly on that one.